Welcome all. I'm Sarah Roeder with AAFMAA, and today we are going to be talking about 3 budgeting pitfalls military families should avoid this year. Now, I'm the Director of Partnership and Member Engagement with AAFMAA, a nonprofit organization that has been around since 1879, serving and protecting our military families. Today, I have Theresa Bailey, an accredited financial counselor, a military spouse, and the creator of the Daily Financial Success, who will be tackling our subject today. Thank you so much, Theresa, for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, as someone who has been in industry helping military families understand their financial outlook and plan for the future, what is the number one pitfall that military families make?
Honestly, the number one pitfall I see people make is really just not knowing. So I always start and tell people, like, you can't manage what you don't know. You have to actually look at your money. And sometimes this is really difficult. So for people who are so into their money, don't understand how this could possibly be difficult. But there's many people who are just hoping the money tree will consistently grow and things will always go well, and they just don't look. So I recommend peeking at all of your accounts at least every 48 hours. And the reason for that is it helps combat fraud. There's a lot of laws that have that 48-hour limit that go with it. But in addition to that, it really helps you hone the craft of forecasting. And this is an essential skill when it comes to budgeting. When you're looking every 48 hours, you're like, okay, number one, was this me? Did I do this? You can really easily accomplish that with apps or just popping on the computer. Should take no more than 5 to 10 seconds to look and make sure all the transactions you see since the last time you were in are actually things that you did. And then you're thinking to yourself, okay, what do I have upcoming? Before the next money comes in, what bills are coming out? So you're just mentally kind of doing this forecasting. And once you get good at that, you can kind of come to some next level steps. But that's the number one pitfall I see is people just actually don't even look. Believe it or not, they just don't even look.
Yeah, that's great. That is such great advice. And I love how we're talking about this in January, a brand new year, a great time to kind of reset, recalibrate your finances. And as you said, forecast, right, for the rest of the year. And as a military spouse, I myself am a military spouse. We know that military spouses are usually doing the majority of the daily financial outlooks of things. And so I love how you have kind of wrapped this up into, you just have to know what you have, right? You got to look at it and you've got to forecast it. So that is really great advice. And that's, really wonderful for a military community to hear that, this is something that not everyone is doing, and you can get a head start by simply just looking, within every 48 hours.
You definitely can. And once you're really good at forecasting your monthly stuff, you can start thinking a little bit broader. We all know that the holidays are coming in 2025, just as they came in 2024, but very few people are preparing right now for them. Or you may know that you need new tires for your car, or an oil change is coming up. And so once you can get, to be expert at that daily, weekly, monthly forecasting, now you can start doing that and projecting it out through the year. And it's super important.
Yeah, it's a great way to take doing things as a little bite at a time, right? Start looking at the daily, thinking of it. Love that advice. Now, what would be your number 2, right? We've got 3 of them to go through. So what is our number 2 pitfall that we see military families are making with their finances?
Okay, we're going to tap into a military phrase here for number 2, which is inspect what you expect. I feel like I hear that a lot around my house with my husband in the service. But basically, it's really just about keeping track of your monthly budget. And what that means is everything coming in and everything that's going out. So now that you've taken a peek at those, daily sort of things as you're looking in your accounts and you're working on the forecasting, now it's like where you put pen to paper. Or now FinTech makes it so easy if you want to use an app or something on the computer. But basically, like, really actually doing it. So the biggest pitfall I see is people who think it in their head and they're like, oh, okay, I spend about this much. So as an example, I had a family once ask me, I asked them rather, how much do you think you spend on dining out? And I use this example a lot in my practice. So this is a family of five. So they go out to lunch after church, and they estimate that they spend about $140 a month eating out. And immediately I knew that they were a little bit off, because this is every Sunday after church. Your family of five goes out to lunch. You're probably spending that at least each week. And when we actually looked at it, they were spending over $1,000 a month eating out. So in my experience, about 99% of the people who think it in their head and try and budget in their head are actually wrong. And sometimes that's just not actually adding up everything. But the other thing is, almost always people miss something. They miss some ongoing entertainment. They miss some subscription. They miss a whole category. So you really do need to find whatever way works for you, whether that's pen and paper, the envelope method, some sort of financial technology through an app or the computer, but every month setting up that budget. And a lot of banks actually have a tracking that you can, tap into and utilize. But I really recommend something that works for you. If you're visual, pick one that works like that. If you like gamification of monthly budgeting, there's great apps for that. If you want the accountability, there's websites and apps for that. So we could definitely offer recommendations on those things, but I think people kind of need to come into their own with the types of budgeting they like to do. But the bottom line is actually do it. You just need to work with, whatever your brain tracks and how you'll keep up with it on a monthly basis. So yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That is also great advice. I'm seeing a theme here of kind of a building block, right? We've kind of started with our first pitfall that people fall into, and how can we combat that? We can look every 48 hours. We can kind of start small, and then we think more broader. Our second pitfall that you see in industry, right, is trying to do this from memory. And now we've got to actually set a budget, and we've got to look at the budget, and we've got to make sure what's coming in and going out is actually what's coming in and going out. So seeing a bit of a trend here in this building blocks, which is great. Sometimes financials can be really overwhelming for people and not fun. And so this feels like a great way to be able to start small. And again, what a great way to start the new year with these.
And also not to confuse a budget with a spending plan. So budgets don't need to be punitive. To me, a budget is really just everything that's coming in and everything that's going out. Your action plan is where you're going to identify hard and fast steps to make a change. But you need to know what you're talking about. And that's why the budget, and that's why this building block, as you pointed out, is just it's a great tool to help sort of have some behavioral modification, even within yourself, to kind of those slow steps toward success.
That's great. So let's get to number 3. Here we are. We might have a bonus round, who knows? But we're going to have our third budgeting pitfall that we see, especially military families, fall into. What would that be?
Yeah. And people should like this one. It's to pay yourself first, not paying themselves. If you wait until the end of the month to save money, there will be nothing left. I promise you that. We can justify all kinds of spending and, think of ourselves last. But in this case, you really need to think of ourselves first. If you don't make this a habit, you're not likely to build wealth. And you're really just like one emergency away from debt. And ultimately, debt is where we want to avoid. That's the killer of all dreams there, killer of all plans. So paying yourself first is important. And even if that just looks like $5 a month or $5 a pay period, you won't miss $5 a pay period. And then eventually you can build that up into whatever your savings goal might happen to be. But if you're not used to paying yourself first, that's your number one takeaway from today, is to start paying yourself first. That is the golden rule of money. And start small, make it a habit. You won't miss it, but you'll thank yourself later.
Yeah, definitely. And for our active duty service members, the blended retirement system and the TSP offers a payback, in a sense, free money in a sense. If you're investing in yourself and you're paying yourself first into your TSP, you're getting matching contributions. So that's a really neat thing for our active duty service members, that if you're going to pay yourself back and not fall into this third pitfall, that you can actually get free money along with that. Who wouldn't like that, right?
Right. Don't give up free money. Don't give up the match. Yeah, of course.
Don't do that. So this has been a really great way to start the year, a great way to kick off 2025 and our budgeting and thinking of finances and thinking about our military families and kind of these three pitfalls they fall into and what are real changes that they can make, tangible things that can be done. You can start small, start at number one, go through number three, and kind of set yourself up for success. But I want to, you've mentioned before and have talked about with your clients, that there's kind of one more thing out there. There's one more bonus pitfall, as we shall call it, that really can derail all of this. And what would that be?
It's honestly just trying to keep up with everybody else. So we call it keeping up with the Joneses. I kind of recently mentioned that, and it was to a younger person, and they like, who's the Joneses? So clearly I'm dating myself with this, with this old time comment, but it's really hard not to compare. They say comparison is the thief of joy. And so when you're looking and you're seeing your neighbor who maybe is your same rank or he lives in your same neighborhood or whatever the case may be, and they have a new boat and you don't have a new boat. And now all of a sudden you think you should have a new boat or want a new boat. And I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but honestly, keeping up with the Joneses is, it's sort of like a recipe for disaster. And I have a statistic here. According to USA Today, in the third quarter of 2024, the average American household had over $104,000 in debt. So that's an all-time high. And they found that 27% of service members had more than $10,000 in credit card debt, compared with just 16%, of civilians. So honestly, you don't want to keep up with the Joneses because the bottom line is they're more than likely in debt.
Yeah.
So unless you really want to match their debt, go ahead and release yourself from that need to be just like everybody around you.
Yeah, that is really great advice. We've kind of set up these three budgeting pitfalls, the solutions to them, how to get yourself on your right footing for our military families. I know as a military spouse, and as we know statistically, military spouses are the ones handling the finances. This is really great to hear. It's great to reiterate. And I really like that fourth point about keeping up with the Joneses. I think, it's social media shows us that, Instagram and all of these things that we feel like we might need. And in reality, it can derail what we're trying to do for our families. We actually had a comment here and a question. And so wanted to ask you, what would be, or is there a way to use these tips to teach military children good financial responsibility? And we're thinking of the next generation coming up. What would be some words of advice there?
So honestly, I love using point number 3 as a starting point for younger kids. They may not be able to get into a bank account or even have one at that point. So many banks, including some military-friendly banks, have some youth accounts that you can set up for free. I highly recommend that. But when it comes to kids, you can talk to them about categories of spending in a broader way. You can say, here is my saving, here's my spending, here's my giving, if you want to have that, and that's important to you and your family. And that's how I would start with them. It's just smaller categories, a little bit broader strokes for young people so they can conceptualize that this is what they get to keep, this is what we're having in the future, and then model it. I mean, the best thing you can do is model good financial behavior for your kids. And it's okay to have conversations at home about money. Years ago, that wasn't a popular thing. And I personally, try to get my parents to talk about them. No, that's, we don't talk about money. So I try to talk about money as much as I can with my kids. I have done that, even when they were little. So keep that dialogue open and kind of have broader categories for them, such as spending, saving, and giving. And I think that's a great start for young kids.
That's wonderful. That's great advice for the next generation to make sure that they are prepared, right? As they come into adulthood and now have those responsibilities, they have a good foundation, right? That foundational block. So that's really great advice. I want to thank you, Theresa, so much for coming on today, for talking about these three pitfalls we see military families fall into. I really appreciate your advice and your insight into this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm Sarah Roeder, and that will wrap up our AFMA Live for today. You can join me on February 5th at 12 o'clock Eastern Time as we discuss the new healthcare flexible spending account for active duty forces. So that's something to look forward to. Of course, if you would like more information about AFMA and building your financial readiness as a member of the military community, you can go to our financial resource page. It'll be located here in the comment sections of this live. It's also here on a QR code on the screen. It's a great page to check out, so hopefully you'll find that of benefit. But thank you all for joining today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Bye now.